All right, so we're going to talk about MLA and APA formatting, and if you've been to another workshop here, this one's going to be a little bit different. I'm not going to be talking the whole time because towards the end of the hour and 15 minutes, we have a lot of different types of sources, and you guys are going to have a chance to practice making either a works cited page or a reference page, depending on what you feel like would be most helpful to your major and course of study, with a variety of references. So the best way to become good at formatting is just to practice it on your own. So you guys will be able to do that with a group. Sound good? Okay, so first of all, let's talk about these formats. Why do you guys think that we have formats? I mean, what is the purpose of them?
To make certain types of writing uniform.
Okay, yeah, so we want to make a writing, especially like research papers, we want to make the writing uniform. Why would that be beneficial?
Easier to find information.
Yeah, so if you're reading a research paper and they have a citation from another source and you want to learn more about that source and what that person said, it makes it easy for you to reference either the works cited or the reference page, so that you can go back to the original source and see it for yourself. So these formats come from, they're mainly used, of course on college campuses, but also in peer-reviewed journals. And that's where you guys will go to find research information. EBSCO's Academic Search Complete is the best one, I think, that we have here. If you're working for a literature class, the other one I would recommend is Gale Literature Resource Center. And when you guys break into your groups, I'll come by and make sure everybody knows how to get onto those. And there's probably other databases we have that are good for other programs of study. That's just coming from the humanities, what I have discovered on the databases. Okay, so there's these peer-reviewed journals. They write in formats. Does anyone know what the purpose of a peer-reviewed journal is? Why do those exist in the world?
So other people can comment on it?
Yeah, so it's peer-reviewed journal. This can be like doctors, scholars, researchers, professors. They're submitting work and it's being reviewed by other experts in the field. Sometimes it's scientific studies, but it's not just limited to that. It could be literary analysis. It could be, different findings, historical findings, right? But the purpose of having it peer-reviewed is so that the information that's being put out by these journals is accurate and reliable. How many of you have ever gone on the internet and you find information and you want to use it in your paper, but you're not really sure whether or not it's reliable? That can be a really frustrating experience. Or even if you just want to know something for yourself, right? You want to know, is this a sign of a horrible disease, or is it just a normal symptom of something, right? But you go online, you get sucked into WebMD, pretty soon you're reading a comment left on someone's blog that says you may be dying tomorrow, and you get very worried, right? Because you don't know how to figure out whether or not the information's good. So the peer-reviewed journals are one great way to find good information when you're researching. And then writing in a format, what do you think it communicates? I know as a teacher, the formatting is the first thing I look at. I look at how the paper is set up, and I go down to the works cited page and I look at that. Why do you think I do that? What is it communicating to me if somebody has good format versus sloppy format?
Shows up for paying attention.
Yeah, and it also can show how serious they are, right, about doing the work. Because this stuff, I always tell my own students, it's not for smart people, it's not particularly hard, it's literally for anyone who can take the time. It's a little bit meticulous, so anyone can do it well if they take the time to just sit there and reference what's on Al at Purdue versus what they're doing. Okay, so 2 formatting systems we're going to talk about. One is MLA, that stands for Modern Language Association. This one is what's going to be used in your humanities courses, English, etc. American Psychological Association is APA, that one is like social scientists. So like psychology, social work, sociology, if you're in nursing, you're definitely gonna need to know APA. So this is just a nice source from another writing center, but I like it because it compares MLA and APA side by side, so you can just see for yourself some of the similarities and differences. So in MLA, we use a works cited page at the end of the paper, and in APA, we use a reference page, and you guys can see these in your handouts. So if you'll flip back, you've got a works cited page in your sample paper about halfway through your packet. And then towards the end of your packet, you have a reference page. So I'm going to give you guys a few minutes, and I want you to tell me just some of the differences that you see looking at the two side by side. Okay, so did anybody find a difference?
The titles are not in quotations.
Yeah, so one interesting thing about APA, they don't use the quotation marks, they still use italics. So I think in this workshop it would be useful to talk about quotation marks versus italics. For MLA, you're going to use quotation marks to encompass the titles of smaller works. And then you're going to use italics. This is my best impression of italics and handwriting for larger works. So like title of a chapter, title of an article in a magazine, title of a poem in a collection, or a short story in a collection, title of an episode of a TV show. Those are all smaller works, so you would put them in quotation marks. And the title of larger works, like the actual name of the TV show, a name of an album, a name of a movie, the name of a book, the name of a collection that encompasses multiple short stories or multiple poems, those things would go in italics. Or the name of an academic journal, for example, is in italics. So with MLA, you see that rule also on the works cited page, but for APA, they don't use quotes around the smaller works. What else do you guys notice about the titles? So this is quotes for smaller works, and they both use italics for larger works. And anyone else notice anything weird about titles in APA? There's no capitalization. So if you look at the titles in APA, on your reference page there, the only words that are capitalized are the first word of the title, any abbreviation, like there you see friendships through IM, so IM is capitalized, it's an abbreviation, or any word that comes after a colon. Those are the only things that get capitalization, but in MLA, all words in the title get capitalization except articles. Like and, or of, or the. So, okay. So, No capitalization for titles. Any other differences you guys notice? Or anything that you see that's the same?
Titles? Right, the sentence?
Oh, you mean like in the paper? Yeah, so I'm just asking about works cited and reference page right now, but we'll talk about that. It's a good point. Subtitles. So one thing about APA, they only use initials for first names. Did you guys notice that? But MLA uses the entire first name. And they're also very focused on year. Look at the order of information that things come in with MLA. They want names, they want titles, they want the publisher, then they want the year, right? But the order is completely different with APA. They want the year as the next thing. And that actually is going to affect your in-text citations as well. So what both formats say is no matter whether paraphrasing, quoting, or summarizing, you always use in-text citations after a paraphrase, quote, or summary. Who wants to tell me the difference between those three? I know for a fact, some of you know it. Okay, if you quote, what are you doing? That one's obvious.
We're telling the reader that somebody else wrote it?
Yeah, a quote is going to be directly word for word what somebody else said, right? And you're going to put it in quotation marks, like this. But there's other ways that you can use information that comes from somebody else, right? One of them is to paraphrase and one of them is to summarize. So what's the difference between those two things?
Using your own words for some of it.
Yeah, so you're using your own words in both those cases. What is a summary? It's what?
Make the text shorter, like brief description.
Yeah, it's like a brief description of a large amount of information, right? Like if you summarize a chapter in a book, you're going to read an entire chapter and write 1 or 2 paragraphs about what was important, right? So a summary is when you take a large amount of information and you put it in your own words, and a paraphrase is a smaller amount of information, like somebody says one quote or one point or one idea, and you put that in your own words. But either way, like Delma said, you've got to show the reader somehow that those ideas didn't come from you, and that is where that's where the in-text citation comes in. So the in-text citations, if you look like through the sample paper, like for MLA, you'll see one at the bottom of page 2 of the sample paper. This is Danoff 5. For APA, the first in-text citation, you actually have some of them in the abstract. What do you guys notice about the difference between the in-text citations for MLA versus APA? Talking about the little things in parentheses that let the reader know that the information came from somewhere else.
Years, the date.
Yeah, APA uses years, and MLA uses what?
Page number.
Yeah. Years in text. And then pages in text. Okay, why do you guys think that would be? So think about what APA is used for. It's used for like social sciences, nursing. Why would years matter more there?
To the currency and relevancy of the information being cited?
Yeah, exactly. So if you have a study on like best practices for treating heart attack patients, right? It really matters whether that study was done in 1978 or 2011, right? One is going to be a lot more recent and more relevant than the other. But if you're writing a paper analyzing Hamlet, it really doesn't matter whether you write that paper in 1978 or 2011 because the primary source, Hamlet, the primary subject material stays the same. And that's why MLA is more focused on page numbers because as long as you find the edition that's in the works cited page, you're going to be able to see that information for yourself. Make sense? Okay. So both of them also have the same rule. If you're introducing a quote, and then you give a citation. Like look on page 5 of your MLA sample essay. This is right after the citation that says Danhoff 69. They have this sentence, in his 1825 book, Nature and Reason Harmonized in the Practice of Husbandry. Note that the title is in what? Italics, because it's a book. John Loran begins his first chapter by stating that, quote, very erroneous theories have been propagated, end quote, resulting in faulty farming methods. Citation 1. So, because in both systems, if you introduce the author before you use the material, the only thing that you have to do in your citation is either the page number, if you're working in MLA, or the year, if you're working in APA. If you look at, on that page 5, at the Danhoff 69 citation, you see that they didn't introduce the author there. They wrote Farming's Influence on Education, which was their subtitle. One result of the newly circulating print information was the, quote, need for acquiring scientific information upon which could be based a rational technology that could, quote, be substituted for a cultural diverse imperial practices. And then they ended the quote and they had to give both the author and the page number because they didn't introduce the author before going into that, right? So that is an important thing to note, that you always want to do your citations. Another similarity between them, they both use alphabetical order. And look at, on the works cited page, and the reference page, what do you notice about what happens to the indentation on both those? Like, look at how the lines are indented. What do you notice stands out on both the works cited? Huh?
The quotes on the more.
Well, everything after the first line
Yeah. It's block, yeah.
is indented. Oh, you guys are talking about quotes in the paper? Yes, we'll talk about block quotes in a minute. But on the works cited page and the reference page, why do you guys think that the lines after the first here are indented?
So you know what belongs to what, you know?
Okay, yeah, so it helps keep the sources separate, right? And what does it make stand out?
The name, which is what you find in the citation. So
Yeah.
you have to find it.
So when you use alphabetical order, if the names are the first thing listed, it makes it really easy to go back to this page at the end of the essay and find all of the sources because they're there in alphabetical order, right? Now sometimes you don't have an author. You see this example for the Historical Census Bureau. If you have to start your citation with a title, then what you're gonna do in your citation for your in-text citation, if you have no title, you're gonna use the first word of the article title in quotes in your in-text citation. And that those quotes show the reader, hey, you're gonna go back to the works cited page and you're not looking for a person, you're looking for the name of an article. Okay. And there's a website, which we'll talk about using more in a second, and you guys can find all these rules for yourself, so you can reference it always. So what Del was talking about is block quotes, and that's when you have a long quote. So look at your MLA sample paper at the bottom of page 6 and the top of page 7, you see an example of a block quote. Anything that takes up more than 4 lines, and that's going to be in your writing here. Like if you go 1, 2, 3, 4, anything that takes up more than 4 lines in MLA uses a block quote. But for APA, it's 40 words or more. So Levi, did you have a question about the block quotes?
Just before that.
Huh?
Before that.
Oh, a question.
Like I was going to ask why there's a bracket on the letter in that quote.
Oh, okay. Hang on, let me write this here. So 4 lines for a block quote, and then we have 40 words. Okay, why is there a bracket in that quotation? Where are you seeing a bracket?
In the first quote we talked about.
Oh, in the first quote that we talked about.
Page 5.
Okay. So brackets are usually used to clarify information, whereas ellipses let you come in late or leave early from a quote. And this is for both styles. So I'm going to say what happened there. Okay, so we'll say brackets, clarify. And then ellipses, that's the 3 dots. You come into quote late or leave early. So I'm guessing that what happened there is this person either had a typo or something cut off the V in very. And so the direct quote was actually ERY, E-R-Y, which didn't make sense. So the writer used the brackets around the V to clarify this is what the person meant. But you could also use them to like explain a definition. So if within your quote there's something that you think that the audience wouldn't understand, you could use brackets to define the word within the quote. It's like saying we're taking a pause from the direct quote because I'm clarifying something that's coming from me, even though it's still in quotation marks. Does that make sense? And then the ellipses, when you use that to come into a quote late or leave early, that is just like, you know, maybe somebody has a really, really long sentence and you only want to use half of it or something, then you can end the sentence where you want to, and you use the ... to indicate there was more to this quote, but it's not relevant to my point. So then the reader, of course, can look at the citation and they can find that information for themselves if they are interested. Okay. So one thing I think people struggle with a lot is just like blending quotes into a paper, and that's something that you will get better with in time, but kind of the challenge is you want to give the reader a little bit of context so that they know the person is credible, right? So if I use a quote from, you know, this book, and I just introduce the quote by saying like, Lee Ryan and Lisa Zimbarelli wrote this about writing centers, you guys wouldn't know who those people are, right? So unless the person is well known, you might need to introduce, give some credibility to like why the person is qualified to speak. So if I say, according to the Bedford Guide for Writing Tutors, and I put that title in italics, then you know that whatever I say next is coming from a published book. And I can just cite, their last names and the page number or the year if I'm using APA, and that sounds a lot more credible. You also don't want to make the mistake of when you explain your quotes after you use them, don't repeat word for word what the person just said, because then you're not adding new information for your reader. So, if I say, according to the Bedford Guide for Writing Centers, quote, revision consists of 2 stages, global revision and sentence level revision, end quote, then it doesn't help me to say, this means that there are both global and sentence level stages of revision, right? I'm not doing anything to give the reader more information, so what I have to do is explain what does global sentence revision mean? What is global revision versus sentence level revision? Global, of course, is changing big picture things. Sentence level is small proofreading tasks, right? Okay. So this isn't the most exciting topic in the world, but it is really important for your papers that you know how to do it right. All right, let's talk about MLA 8th edition, because they made some big changes and it's left a lot of people confused. They changed it this summer. First time they changed it in 6 or 7 years. So their new system, this is from the MLA website. So you guys know it is the most reliable because it's what Modern Language Association says. Their big thing now is that they have an order for the way that they want citations in a works cited page to appear, and they say as long as you follow their order, then you should know how to cite most different kinds of sources. So their order is always author, title of source, title of container, which means what's the bigger thing that it's in. So if you're using Langston Hughes' essay from the Longman Reader, the title of the source is Salvation, because that's what his essay is called, but the title of the container is the Longman Reader. Other contributors, so in that case that would be editors. He's the author, but they're the editors. Version, number, publisher, publication date, and location. That's a lot of information. Sometimes you won't find all of that information from one source. So when you don't have things, you don't have an author, you have to skip it and move to the next thing that you do have, like the title of the source. And that's what goes into the works cited page first and what you refer back to. So this is just a helpful thing for you guys to have to know what's changed. But a lot of the big things are still the same. One thing it does really affect those, if you use EBSCO for research and you just copy and paste citations that are from EBSCO, just know that they're probably going to be incorrect. Because they'll probably be 7th edition still, because it takes a while to update all of that stuff. So, another thing we should probably talk about, the setup for MLA is really pretty simple. You have a header that's your last name and the page number, and then your heading, which is only on the first page, is your name, the professor's name, the course, and the date. But in APA, you have to make a different header for the first page. So when you go in to edit header, there's a box you can click that says different first page. So if you go from Microsoft Word, edit, insert header, there's a editing box that lets you select different first page, and I can show any of you if you've been wondering about that. But the first page, you make a running head that has the entire title and the page number, and on the second and all the subsequent pages, the words running head disappear. It's just the title and the page number, and the title is actually in all caps. And you also have an abstract. Do you guys know what abstracts are? Have you seen them before when you're researching? What is it? Yeah, perfect. It's just like a summary of the article. So those are good things to read when you're researching, because it lets you know if it's not going to be something that's helpful to you, then you might not want to spend the time to read the whole article. So it's just a fast way to know whether or not something's gonna be useful. Delma had asked about the subtitles in MLA, or sorry, in APA. See how they bolded and they have these little subtitles like literature review, and a couple of pages later you get discussion, limitations of studies, technological limitations, demographic limitations. These are just, subtitles are just a way to organize your thoughts, and it's especially useful for APA when you might be writing about something medical, right, that you've got to explain lots of terms. That can be a good strategy there. So, before we move on to the fun part of the workshop, what questions do you guys have about APA versus MLA, or maybe just things that you've done wrong that you don't understand why they were wrong? Do you guys know what the et al means when you see in the citation, like at the top of page 4 of the APA sample paper, you get this in-text citation that says Cummings et al. And that's ETAL period, and then comma in the year. What does that et al mean? Yeah, so that just means there's more than one author involved, but it's too many to sit there and list them all every time you do a citation. So MLA calls that number at more than 3. So they say for 2 people, you put both people's name in the works cited page. For 3 people, you put all 3 people's names in there. And APA calls that after 6. So if it's 7 or more in APA, you're going to use the et al. And it's definitely worth, on this sample paper, like taking it home with you and just looking at how each type deals with multiple authors. Because like APA, they always keep the last comma first format for authors. So on that second source in the reference page, you can see there are 4 authors there, and they listed them all last name, comma, first initials. But in MLA, that doesn't happen. In MLA, only the first author gets last name, comma, first, and then subsequent authors get first name, last name. So like in this book, it'd be like Schindel, comma, Ellen, and William J. Macaulay Jr. So that's another difference between them. But that's what et al means. Yeah, anything you guys have been wondering about, feel free to ask. And I don't know everything off the top of my head. I use AL at Purdue, which is what you guys will use today when we do this activity. That's what I refer to when I'm making a works cited page. Another piece of advice I will give you from someone that has been through many trials and errors of research papers is, as you research, make sure that you have a copy of the article as a PDF file. Don't just send yourself links, because sometimes those get broken and it's hard to find your research again, and that can be really discouraging when you've already done the work to find it. Another thing is, make sure that you cite things in your works cited page as you go, because sometimes at the end of a writing process, it's really hard to remember everything that you referenced, and even if you're going back and looking at the citations, it can be easy to leave stuff out. So just make that page as you go. And I always think that's kind of fun, you know, you have to figure out where it's going to go in alphabetical order, you have to add it in. To me, it's always a relief, because the whole paper I have to think, but when I'm doing this, I only have to look and see what comes next. You don't have to make any decisions, you're just following a formula. So that's nice. Yeah, anything that you guys have been wondering about, like situations you've come across that you don't know how to deal with them?
You might have already said this, but I noticed there's different kinds of subtitles, like all capitals, I guess in the MLA, all capitals or italics. Like when you use the different types of subtitles.
Yeah, let's look, okay, so you're talking about
Like
the,
page 2 on the
Uh-huh.
MLA one. There's historical context in all caps, and then there's,
oh, okay, yeah. So they're talking about, they call this like C-level headers versus B-level headers. And your A-level header is your title, your main title of your paper, right? So like for this one, it's Toward a Recovery of 19th Century Farming Handbooks. That's your A-level title. And then historical context, the subtitle that's in all caps, they're calling that a B-level subtitle. And then she said like, why is population and technological changes a little further down the page in italics? So they're calling that a C-level subtitle, and they're just saying the population and technological changes is still something that goes under historical context. And so that's why they did it that way. Subtitles are definitely like an option. You guys don't have to do them, but I think that they're kind of doing everything fancy here just to show you like what it would look like. So then everything is basically related to that, and they don't have another B-level subtitle until conclusion, which goes back to all caps. So APA uses bold for their subtitles, MLA uses this caps for large things and italics for smaller things that go into large things. The block quotes that we talked about, you're just going to use 2 tabs for that, and you actually get to take them out of quotation marks. If you look on page bottom of 6 and top of 7 in the MLA one, you'll see what I mean. Indenting it 2 tabs indicates to the reader that it is a direct quote, and that's also the only time that your period comes before the citation instead of after, which I really do think is just to make people's lives a little bit harder. These formats are meticulous, but they're meticulous for a reason. Remember, journals will use this stuff and whether or not people adhere to it as a way to decide whether or not they're even going to consider reading the article. So if it says we follow MLA and you submit something that's not perfect MLA, that gives them reason to not pay attention to it, sadly. But you know, they're getting lots of submissions, so they need a way to differentiate quickly really whether or not someone's professional. And you know, these things, they change because they're trying to accommodate new types of sources that people use. When I was in college, we got to use footnotes, and it was a great time for MLA, but that died, and papers have never looked, as cute since they had footnotes. You know what I'm talking about? They were really cute. They're like little notes at the bottom of the page. When I was in college, that was A-okay with MLA, but now, no more. Who like footnotes? I think that they're adorable, but Modern Language Association has never called me to ask my opinion, so maybe one day. We can all dream. Yeah, sometimes the citations for APA, they come at like the beginning of the source use instead of the end. Like you'll see on page 4, in the start of the second paragraph, they say Cummings et al., parentheses, 2002, reviewed an additional study conducted in 1999 by the HomeNet project. See Appendix A for more information on the HomeNet project. In this project, and then they list more authors, parentheses, 1999. You know, like they're giving citations one after the other to refer to numerous different studies. And that happens more in APA than in MLA. I've had questions before about like, what if you're using a source and they refer to another source? You just have to say, you know, in the book, Building Writing Center Assignments or Assessments That Matter, you know, they gave a quote from Professor Watson at Grand Valley State University who said blah, 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 but then you're still citing Schindel and Macaulay because that is your original source. Even though they're quoting someone else, you just say, hey, they're using a quote from somebody else. Any other stuff that's giving you guys anxiety? Anyone had a paper decimated for poor formatting. Maybe you don't want to share that, but can happen. Oh, you'll notice like APA, they use the and symbol for and MLA uses the word and. Again, these are like nitpicky little differences, but to someone who's used to the format, these things will just stick out to you. Like I can always tell if I'm in class and I see somebody's using the APA, it'll stand out to me right away. Okay, you guys want to try the activity? Okay, so let's see, we can do like a group of 4 and a group of 3 and another group of 3. And I have sources for you guys, so what we'll do is you guys will get on the website OWL at Purdue. Well, let's do it this way. How many of you mostly use MLA? Anybody mostly use APA? You mostly use it? Oh, okay. Nobody mostly uses APA. Okay, so we'll all do MLA today then, if that's what's going to be useful for you guys. So, yeah, in your groups, we'll get on OWL at Purdue. You can see what the citations should look like. And I just brought a variety of sources. So like this is a book with 2 authors. This is what's going to be considered by MLA as an anthology because it's got a lot of different authors within it. So you'll cite Langston Hughes. You're going to cite his smaller work in this larger work. Got a couple of books. This one has 2 authors. This one just has 1 editor, so you'll have to know what to do if you only have an editor. You guys should cite an article from our lovely Midland College Press to see what newspaper article citations look like. I have another anthology here, and I have a dictionary. And then if there's something you're curious about, like you want to cite a movie, or you want to know how to do a magazine, you can do that as well. And I'll make sure that you guys, well, has anyone never used EBSCO before to research? Okay, a couple of you. We're going to talk about it in class soon. But yeah, I'll make sure that you guys know how to find the databases too. So it's like 1 from each group, so I'll come around to each group and make sure you know how to do that too. Sound good? So we're going to go till 2:15. We have about 30 minutes for the activity. Practice, works cited page. The only way to do it is to try, so don't freak out. If you have questions, I'll help you, but I promise it's fun.
What about do you want to do this one? Since they
It's
are
not so
here.
bad.
So these are the two editors.
These computers are on, guys. If you just tap them, they will wake
That
up.
has 1 editor and then we'll this one.
I want to know how to use this.
We'll be the. I have a laptop, so if we go to
All right, so the website is OWL, like the bird, OWL, at Purdue, like the school. Yep, and you're gonna go to MLA format.
Are we doing 1 citation per group?
1 works cited page, yeah. Yeah. Just make sure you all know what's going on.
Yes, ma'am.
OWL at,
That's where I went to monitors and then these 2 have 2 others.
here's the website and how it's spelled.